Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL for 5% off your order. We're also sponsored by Quiver Time, makers of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine card holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their site for 10% off your purchase. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them for all your deck list needs. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam and Casual Magic is brought to you by Quiver, Cool Stuff Inc., and Architect. Today I have a very special guest, SKAltered on the Twitter, SKAltered, SK something. You'll see it in the name, or EK will throw it down in the chat because he's really good at that. And I wanted to have him on today to talk about the art of making altars. I've had Eric Klug on before. I've had a couple of other artists and altarists before, and I've found that learning and walking through the processes of how you guys do these things is just fascinating and cool. I'll say this right now up front. I love me some altered art cards. I love people painting on cards. I love seeing original artwork or cool replications or whatever. Um, and yes, I'm totally proxy friendly, so just chill, guys. It's fine. However, for the purposes of what we're talking about, a proxy and an altar are not the same. So chill. Hi, friendo. How's it going? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here and happy to make that distinction right up front. Nice.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to at least just kind of at least hit that right now because sometimes, the discussion gets a little crunchy and people are like I know that there's some issues in Magic rules where it's like you can't use certain you can't use certain altered cards because of they cover certain text or they need to have some level of legibility or whatever, which I hope they revise because all these secret layers make that
Yeah.
kind of hypocritical. Um but like if you've got a friggin' Phyrexian Elixnorn or an altered Elixnorn that looks like, I don't know, Power Rangers, I would rather have the Power Rangers one because I can at least read that.
Totally. It is really funny for years it was, and I guess still technically the golden rule is the casting cost and the name of the card, power and toughness of the creature are fully preserved. And that also, I think that the original art is in some way um, recognizable, which is, as you said, after the secret layers, after the double-sided dinosaurs on cards that weren't double-sided, I think it might be time for them to change up that rule. But
Wait, which
no pressure,
double-sided
Walkie.
dinosaur on a non-double-sided
I
card?
so I think I want to say it's Galta. There's a secret layer based off of cereal boxes.
Right, that one was sick.
Yeah, and it's so creative, and I definitely remember drawing on cereal box things. So it does bring up, I like how it brings up a memory of something that's kind of filled with childhood and at times, but it has no relationship to the functionality of the card. It just seems unfair to give alters that bad rep.
Yeah, I feel like they haven't revised that mainly just because it hasn't come up,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna put a bug in Toby's ear and just be like, "Yo, man, this is like if I can have frosted officially Magic branded Frosted Flakes as my Ulamog, I'm sure that I can get a really cool looking, Lorana altar of my whatever. Anyways, uh not the point. But altars are awesome and I love them and I love to collect them. And so how did you get into painting in the first place, or rather into like because I know when I talk to Klug and some other folks, it's like painting on cards is not something you just walk into. Like that's very hard to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, that is true. And I definitely painted first regular size, even big. Um, and I love doing art. That's just a huge part of my life. But I started playing Magic in the 90s. I think I started before Urza Saga, but the first set I have this really clear memory of getting was a box of Urza Saga, and that's when I really got into it. And then I played for quite a while, and then I set down the cards for years. and kind of life took me in other directions. And I think around 2016, I was actually
Hmm.
I was actually traveling for an art exhibition of my other work, and a friend said, "You remember this game?" And he showed me Land War Elves. And I remember just so many feelings. I was like,
The
I
flood, right?
remember it all. It's like, and of course, this friend has like since stopped playing. I've since
That thing,
complete.
I hate that so much. You think you're clean, you think you're away
Mhm,
from the game,
mhm.
and someone's like, "Yo,
Yeah,
man, you just take a hit and then they walk away just fine." And here you are with $20,000 in cardboard.
yeah, yeah. He literally bought me the Teferi Commander Precon.
Oh
I
no.
had never seen a Planeswalker. I remember the first time I played it, I thought I could activate that ability as many times as I wanted each turn. I
That's
was like,
better
I'll
than
just
my first time I saw a Planeswalker. I thought they had summoning sickness, and then the next turn the other player just nugged it and killed it, and I was like, this card sucks."
yeah. And he said, you can have you can have this deck, and if you don't want it, I'll just buy it from you. And of course, sucked in. But then after playing again, I started seeing the different treatments of the cards. I remember seeing, I think they were called MPR cards, Magic Player Rewards, these full art cards, which are also very different. And um, I remember the new border really threw me for a loop.
Yeah. The cards look
And
very different, don't they?
they look very different. And I thought I saw some of the full art lands. There weren't that many at that time, and the full art John Avon, I guess they were unglued or no,
It would have been at that point, it would have been unglued and unhinged.
yeah, unhinged. And the unglued ones with the ovals were very cool.
Yeah, I
And
like that
then the
fringe a lot,
unhinged,
actually.
yeah, and the unhinged ones, they have the centered title, and I think they're one of the only lands where the title is centered, which I think is very cool. And I thought the way the art moved across the whole thing was great, and that you didn't need to you didn't need the text on the basic lands. It was so straightforward. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, I wonder if there are any full art lands with old borders, because I just preferred the old border, and there weren't. So the very first card I made was just like trying to fulfill my own desire for a full art old border basic.
Full art old bordered basic. I mean, I guess technically the unglued ones were old bordered because they were old bordered, but that oval did not look like a standard full art. I
Yeah,
mean, it was cool though, except I didn't like the island the way it kind of zigzagged. I thought that was not the best
yeah,
design. But the unhinged lands though, I love the way that they were like squares. Like that
yeah.
was just really, really like the rectangle looked so clean and so like just neat looking. And of course, those are obviously like the best looking land in Magic um, among them. But
They're
yeah,
very elegant.
my problem was that like for a long time, those were like the unhinged unglued lands were like the only ones I really, really wanted full art because like
Yeah,
the other ones were like Zendikar and like some of the Zendikar
mm,
lands were cool, but they're not.
yeah,
They're also a little too Zendikar. They had like
yeah.
Hedrons or whatever. I'm like, and then Amonkhet full lands. I'm like, that's even worse. They're all just like boring
Like
deserts
horns.
and like
They all have the horns.
yeah, they had the
Yeah,
horns or something and
yeah. I
mm,
have quite a few of those. That was the first set that I really drafted. I'm
mm,
not very good at draft, but I remember I think it was Hour of Devastation or maybe it was Double Almond. It was super aggressive, like red white, super
yeah,
fun. I got a lot
man.
of and like
I'm just thinking back to like Amonkhet and Kaladesh block draft, and it was just like, oh, turn things sideways and hit them hard and over again, and like exert your stupid green guy. Uh, the worst was
on
like
crop.
afflict. Yes,
Oh
on crop crasher. Isn't that what it was?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
It was a house.
yeah, the thing just punched you in the face. And I'm like, this is. I every now and then I'm like, oh man, people hated those blocks, and I think back, I'm like, wait, why did I love it? Oh, because it's literally the easiest magic in the world. Turn things sideways and punch people till they die,
Yep,
and that's all I want to do. Oh my god.
absolutely.
The problem was
Uh,
Hour of Devastation because Afflict is a miserable mechanic. Like,
oh
hey,
yeah.
you can't block literally ever. You will just
Yep.
die.
We'll
Um,
just remove this really key part of the game.
I mean, like, look, you weren't blocking anyways with Amonkhet Limited, but this time you're really not blocking.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, cool. So you got back in around like 2016. That's like one of the pivot points I like to think about of like when people really started coming back to Magic, because like, and that's like when Commander started to like Commander had been out since 2011, but like in the mid 2000, mid 2010s or whatever, it really started skyrocketing. That was when
Yeah.
like Kaladesh came out and like Conspiracy, and there was just suddenly like a big wave of cool things. But so you altered basic lands first? Like,
The
what was
very
that
first
like?
thing I did, it's one of those things where I didn't make my Instagram and a kind of professional profile for years later, but the very first thing I posted was this first basic that I made, and it is actually, I have it. I've got it right here. I pulled
Oh,
a few things to show you. This is,
cool.
you know, maybe EK can put up a better looking version of this, but I'll
Yeah.
show you here. Just so this is the first altar I ever made, and it's this classic John Avon basic.
Can you describe it for
Um,
the audio listeners at home?
yeah, absolutely. So good. I wonder what set it's from. It's very red.
Yeah.
It's got what's called atmospheric perspective, where the distance is established by the mountains getting hazier as they move back, in
Mm.
increased contrast to the front. And I remember, John, I just thought the way the Avon lands were so elegant. And what I did on this one is instead of having the text box on the bottom, I made the art continue all the way around, but I preserved the size of the old border.
Mm.
And the key to this one, the top part up here is the original, and this part is painted. And that's, one of the most classic, simple
So it's
kinds of
like an
altars you can
extension,
do.
basically.
Just an extension. And I thought, well, I had the art supplies from making art anyhow. I didn't go out to buy anything. And for this first one, I actually erased the card, which is not something I do these days.
How did you do? Like, how do you do that?
You know, you use an eraser. It's crazy.
Like a legitimate, like just eraser?
An eraser. There are certain,
Oh, I
there are
guess it's
people
just
who love,
ink, so you can probably rub
yeah,
it off if you rub hard enough.
yeah, especially on the old cards. And as someone who's worked on hundreds of cards now, I'm like really sensitive to different card stocks and different printing. But I just, by good luck, I chose one where the set, it actually erases very nicely. um, and I went around and ended up doing a whole set of them. I really liked them, and just extending the art where there wasn't a plan. I just kind of improvised, and it
Mm.
it felt coherent. It felt very straightforward. And at the time, I had gone from playing Commander to playing Legacy because I had some of my old cards, and I also saw some of the new creatures. And I remember I saw Emrakul, the original Emrakul, banned Emrakul, and thought, what are creatures now? and and uh,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've come from a land of gray ogres and three threes and whatever, and suddenly you're staring down a 15/15
like,
indestructible with like just win the game on it.
unbelievable. And I, shout out to Nightwear in Los Angeles and Lori. She she still runs the shop and lends out legacy decks for people to
Mm,
play and sanctioned play. So they're full legacy decks. And she's like, just borrow Sneak and Show.
sure, why
Turns out
not? NBD.
playing Speak and Show badly is easy. Playing Speak and Show very well is trickier. But I ran with it, had a lot of fun, and then eventually had a lot of the old cards and built some of it myself. And it can get played like one basic mountain and two basic islands at a time. And so I just made my basics. I was like, all right, easy enough, and kind of fit with the aesthetic. And then people kind of would start asking me about them. So, well, can you do this or can you do that? And so I would occasionally make little pieces for my friends, and that went on for a couple of years where it was really just within the community of people I was playing with, where I would make the altars. I would make them for myself. And I would say maybe by 2019, I decided that I could take it a little further. And actually, going back to the legality things, one of the more ambitious early altars I made, also a legacy thing, is I made a Delver of Secrets.
Hmm.
And I did both sides. And the reason I chose Delver of Secrets was because I could represent it with a checklist card in my deck. And so one altar would work as a playset, and I didn't have to worry about the legality of the card
Hmm.
because I'm using the checklist card anyhow, and the art refers the original, but it was full art Delver on both sides.
Also, wait, I want to stop you for a second. You said
Yeah,
one art could be the whole playset because, of course, your Delver is going to die, and you're not going to have
yeah,
two Delvers in play.
no, yeah. Who needs two Delvers? It's like, this is Delver. I want one creature, like one or
Ever.
zero lands in play, and 7 cards in hand. You know,
God, I
it's
hate Delver decks so
brutal.
much. I
Oh,
hate
so
Delver so
brutal.
much. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
eventually moved to zombies in Legacy,
Let's
and
see.
I
Wait, there's a Legacy Zombies deck?
Sam Black's bombardment deck,
Oh,
which
well,
I
of course
which I
Sam would have figured it out. I'll have to
yeah,
look it up.
it was not a tier deck, but it was actually very good against miracles. And then after Hogak came out, it actually was pretty good. And
I had
yeah,
Legacy Elves for a long time, and that deck is really hard to play. Like,
oh yeah,
it's a lot of sequencing and a lot of, like, numbering, and then, of course, they printed friggin' Fury, and there's no point.
yeah,
GG's.
no,
Um, so
yeah,
actually, I wanna go back to the mountain for a second there,
mm,
because one thing I've
mm,
always been curious about, like, I can understand doing a full alter of a card, like, you take it,
mm,
you white it out, you erase it, whatever it is, and then you paint whatever you want on top of it. That's one talent. A different talent, though, is taking art that exists and then trying to mimic the artist's style and then extending that out to the borders
mm.
or to the bottom. How do you even approach something like that? How do you take a card that somebody says, "Please, I want you to extend the art of this." How do you do that in a way that looks natural and that kind of matches? Because, like, I mean, the coloration of the cards alone is variable, right?
It is, yeah, it is. It is actually, it's kind of its own set of skills. And I don't do many extensions these days because the kinds of stuff I like to do are really trying to be the most ambitious. But I recently did one again just to kind of return to the fundamentals, and it's still hard. It still has its own skill set, and no matter what you're doing on a card, you have to pay really close attention.
Hmm.
For me, I'm an absolute stickler for the thinness of the paint. I want it to be imperceptible as much as possible, which means multiple multiple layers of thin paint, which is odd. You would think multiple layers it gets thicker, but actually, rather than putting on paint to build up tone in one go, you do it very subtly, and that actually sinks down with the card, makes it a very smooth surface that you won't get any markings on it.
Huh.
And I think the same kind of goes for color matching, where you really have to just pay very careful, close attention. Interestingly, acrylic paint dries a slightly different color than it is applied wet.
Oh, no.
So, so there's a slight, experience helps there. And there's some altruists who really, that's their specialty, or extensions, or um, opening up the art, making it a different size. And hats off to people who do that, especially play sets. I think you'll find that a lot of altruists who have been working for a long time kind of do really complicated pieces shy away from play sets because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of doing the same thing over and over.
Mhm.
And if I have the choice to avoid that, I do. I don't really take on playset commissions anymore, and I know some of my friends in the altering space don't. So hats off to those who do. Um, and I think one thing that is actually for me the same, whether I'm extending or making a completely original art, which I do occasionally, or the thing I do actually the most often is find pieces of existing art from culture at large. Whether for me, art history is a specialty, although I also draw on pop culture.
Mhm.
Um, that feels like it relates to the card already. And even with an extension, I think it's really important that it stay true. So I always try to add a new element, um, something that wasn't in the card already, but is there, but kind of feels like part of the original intent of the illustration.
Hmm.
And I think that when you just make a picture bigger without bringing a little bit of yourself to it and thinking about the original illustrator's point of view, you're going to lose something in the translation. It won't kind of sing the way a piece that really has that care in it does.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been, like, I'm listening to you, but I was also going through your Facebook archives at the same time,
Yeah.
and I ran into this Sylvan Library that you did that looks like a
Mm,
temple in Cambodia, and I was like,
mm,
"Holy crap, that never occurred to me," but now I absolutely want to have an Angkor Wat style or like a Shem Reap style Sylvan Library. Holy crap! I that would have never occurred to me. But like that's such a beautiful like kind of you're still keeping the same shape forms that were in the original, but then like altering it in such a way that it still feels like it belongs on the card it came from. And I think that's really, really talented and hard to do.
Oh, thank you. That is, I really loved that piece. I did ended up doing three for that same client.
I
Three
might need
different
to send you
Sylvan
mine.
libraries. I was happy to do a Sylvan, and although I don't do repeats on art, so we'd find
Well, there's a lot of
a
temples in
different
Cambodia, let
picture.
me tell you.
Exactly. And that's such a like. There's something about pulling from the real world. In my experience of Magic, fifth edition was big for me.
Mm,
Fifth edition had some issues as a set. What I remember, Escaped Zombies, that Samuel Taylor Coleridge quote. Oh my God, so incredible. They stirred, they groaned, they all uprose, or spake or moved their eyes. It's like drawing from something from the world, from literature, and seeing that on a card really sparked my imagination as a kid. And I think that was part of Garfield's intention for the game. There's so much literary stuff in Alpha,
yeah.
all these quotes. And I think that if you look at the playtest cards for the game, those really
Calvin and
draw
Hobbes is
on
on them and like
absolutely Calvin Hobbes on Disenchant, you know, and that's actually a type of alter I do. Are these cards where I sort of cover the original playtest cards and paint them as if they're stuck in there. You can actually buy those, and I think Sam at Ristic Studies made this incredible video on Chaos Orb recently,
yeah.
and he had a couple of my Chaos Orb pieces in the video, which was really cool. And one of them was I had done a altar of the Gamma playtest of Chaos Orb, which is called Sphere of Annihilation, and I painted that on a Chaos Orb as if that playtest card had been shoved in the sleeve with it, which is often how
That's
collectors
so
would play them.
cool.
That was
That
a
is
really
so
fun
cool
piece.
looking. Holy crap. Like
Um,
I'm looking at the I found it in your archive and I'm just looking at this like that looks like the orb is just emerging from that old painting. Oh man, that looks rad.
are you looking at the Durer one?
Yeah, the Durer one.
Oh yeah, that one also made it into the video. That one, that's cool. Every once in a while, this is something that's happened since I've been out a bit longer as an altruist. I'll get a client who says, "I want this card, but you have total freedom as to what to do." And so that client sent me his unlimited chaos orb and said, "Paint anything you want on it." And I said, "Well, I think I've got an idea." So let's see, that is an Albrecht Dürer piece, and I believe it's called "The Breaking of the Seal." Let's see here, the opening of the fifth and sixth seal, and
Let's go
the
with it.
original print is from 1498. And I just love the way it's this apocalypse scene, and Durer has this crazy imagination, and that Chaos Orb, the Teton art is one of the best pieces of art in the game. To me, it's like Soul Ring might be number one, and Chaos Orb might be number two, but like it's in contention. It's so insane, and it's the idea that this classic art piece could host the traditional art for the thing, and that they feel like it could be together. Like if Durer saw Chaos Orb, maybe it would fit. And that piece,
Hmm.
it was very technically tricky to do because the figures are so small. Their heads are half the size of a fingernail.
Yeah, and it's all very intricate kind of line work in there. And it's very, very detailed. I'm gonna have to have EK like dig through your thing and figure these ones out because that is just stunning. And I'm looking at the Chaos Orb you mentioned, where you pasted the original
Mm.
version into it, and that looks so sweet. Like I love that you got it kind of skewed in front, as if somebody took the piece of paper and shoved it into like the
Yeah,
sleeve, the way we would have done it when we were kids, and we are like, yeah, this is actually like
this is
with a
this.
post-it note just stuck on top of it. I definitely
Exactly.
I definitely had Island, which I would write and said like mocks and just slap it in the sleeve on a piece of like 3x5 or
Totally.
whatever. Um, wow, man, Spear of Annihilate. Yeah, that's okay. So here's a question though, because one
Mm-hmm.
thing I'm seeing is a lot of the altered you've been doing, you do a lot of really intricate lettering as well.
Mm.
Like especially in the making these ones look like the original Gamma text, or some of like you've got a Serendib Efreet that's written in Arabic. Like,
Yeah, that was
do you know how to write in Arabic?
I my
Good enough?
grandfather could.
Uh,
I I cannot read it or write it, but I worked with someone who did speak it. Because one thing, I'm not going to write something in a language and write it wrong.
mm,
I just, this translation could be imperfect in some ways, but it has had multiple people who are fluent proof it. So if there's some Oracle text issue, that's an issue. And I know it was interesting. I did a full set of Serendib Afrit in Arabic. I also did Ali from Cairo and Diamond Valley.
that's
And for
rad.
Ali from Cairo, we had a whole debate of whether using Oracle text or the original text. And these interesting stylistic choices.
I would have
And
gone with the original text just as a principle of the thing. It's
oh yeah,
Ali
I
from
mean,
Cairo.
yeah, exactly. Summon Ali from Cairo, so cool.
Yeah.
And with that one, it's I always am looking for things to kind of push the limits of what's possible. And I have to say, changing language from a card is extremely fiddly and a pain in the butt. But the idea really sung, and I was like, well, I can make this work, and I'll definitely uh, tip of the hat to Scourge Alters, who really taught me how to do that. I mean, both literally, he's I think the single best person for language swaps. He also of Altruists is the most ambitious in working with foil, which is not something I do. But but he also has a really long backlog. He does do play sets. You could be waiting over a year for your cards, and he's a good communicator too, or certainly improved on that. But it's slow, and I had clients asking me about the language stuff, and I asked Scourge, well, what's the technique you do? And I'll describe it. You blank the card,
Sure.
and when I say blank, I don't mean erase the image. I mean erase the text.
Hmm.
So I actually did this with a set of plateaus that were unlimited plateaus, and that the dual land text box has that
Oh wait, you have to
concentric
erase the
circle.
text without erasing the weirdo stripes?
Yeah, so I repainted over them,
Oh geez.
and then it looks as if the card is blank, as if it has nothing written on it, and then it is sprayed with a fixative that keeps it inert, and then the text is put over that, and then it's fixed again. So it's a very, very laborious process. It actually, I would say it's worse than a fall art alter in terms of the labor.
Yeah, that's
Um,
like first off, you did a full art extension of the old plateau by Tucker, and then
yeah,
you went and you had to write in the kanji of all the things, which
yeah,
is already a pain in the butt by itself as somebody who can write in Japanese.
yeah,
Yeah, good luck with that. Um,
yeah.
and then like, put shadowing like God, your paintbrushes must be so thin.
They're very, very small brushes, and that one, because of the way the Japanese text alignment works and the rules for Japanese text where it's supposed to be as even as possible, the mana symbols are in a different place, so I had to repaint the mana symbols and
Oh
text box
Jesus,
as
that
well.
must have been a and then you also have to make them look like the OG the OG
Yeah,
plane symbol too.
exactly, exactly. And then I looked, I was looking at Japanese lightning bolts from the first sets that had Japanese to decide whether to do the illustration credit in Japanese. And I decided what they
Iras.
did is, you don't put the illustrator's name, but you do the other part. So that's sort of a whole series of tiny decisions. And it's really about like a passion for the history of the game. I think the clients who pick pieces like that, they've been playing for a long time.
Mm.
That
Yeah,
client,
like
his entire deck is Japanese, Painter Servant, Legacy deck. He's
mm.
never selling it. It's
That's the thing. Like one of the things I've noticed is the people who are most passionate about getting altered, and especially folks sometimes get a little like shocked about like, oh no, you're altering a Mox or a Lotus or whatever. Yeah, but the guy
yeah,
who owns that deck or the lady who owns that deck, that is their forever deck. If they're a
yeah,
vintage player who's invested enough to have a deck and also want to get altered, they're not parting with those cards like
yeah,
now or ever, basically. So it's like that's what I think one of the things I've learned is like when I get cards altered, it's the ones that I know that I'm always going to want to use because I want to
yeah.
make sure that it's a card that I can always like Modfly Alter did a version of Meteor Golem for me that looked like Zangief jumping in from the top belt and doing his like body press to slam down because that's what the card feels
Perfect.
like to me. and like that card is always going to be in my deck because I play that in like as many decks as I can. And just the idea of slamming down a Zangief and just like wow,
Mm,
it's so like I have some altars and some things that I keep in my binder because I think they're just pretty
mm.
and beautiful. Like Greg Sablon's wife drew Oh My Goddess Beldandi on a Titania
So
for me, and I
great.
was like, this is stunning, and I could never play it. It's going to sit in my binder, and it's going to sit in my happy place where I can look at it and feel good. Um, but I think that it's like if you are somebody who is dedicated to your deck, and
Mm,
like we all know, we've got pet cards, we've got pet decks, we've got things that are just not gonna shift, and
yeah.
those are the cards I feel best about altering. Because like if it's a card that I'm just kind of on the fence about, then I'm like, oh, if I get it altered and I just cut it later, that's not fun, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I love that about it, and I would say I'm one about half of the pieces are things where the idea is really fully coming from me,
mm,
and then the other half are ones where the client says, "I have this idea. Can you make this happen?" And the clients don't tell me, you know, put the hand to the left or whatever, but they say, I there's this source in the world that I think it really fits with this card. Can you make this work? And it really reflects their passion, and I love that about it because I think that that's part of what casual magic is about for me. Like I these days, although we talked about legacy, most of the formats I play and put time into are more or less run by fans.
yeah.
I play old school, pre-modern, and EDH, which maybe is the biggest format in the world, but it started as a fan format, and
And
it
technically, it's
really
still
connected
run
to
by
those roots.
fans. It's still like
Yeah.
Wati has no say in what we actually do, much to
Oh,
their own
chef's kiss.
chagrin.
Very, very pleased.
But
Just,
they get real
yeah.
grumpy about it sometimes, though, and like then they'll design cards to be end around. Like they're like, Why won't you let planeswalkers be generals?" And whatever long discussion, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, well here's Grist. What are you gonna do about that now?" And I'm like, "You got me on
Yeah.
that one, buddy."
Yeah. Insane card.
Oh my
I
god,
run I run Grist in my Aiden Oakenshield deck,
that card is so
and it's like
cool. It's
so cool.
I
And
loved your Uriel the
yeah,
Miststalker, by the way. That keeps kind of the posing of Uriel, but makes it look like a Grecian urn.
oh yeah, that's such a pleasure, and that's one where, I'm not the first altruist to do a Greek black style pottery piece.
I
And the
mean,
client said, I wanna see Euro the Miststalker as Achilles. But what I bring to it is I have this kind of art historical intensity about it, where I say, okay, I want to do this Greek black style piece, but I also want to do a particular real pot by one of the most exemplary black style artists, which is someone named Ezekias, an absolute master of the technique. And the shatters on the pot, which are represented in that card, are the actual shatters that pot has in real life. This
oh,
isn't
that's
just,
so sick.
it's in the British Museum, and they have very detailed images on their collection. So the places where the color is off in the shatter, that's the way the restorer painted it. So this is a depiction of this pot as it exists in the world. And then it also completely feels like Ural because it's the flavor works.
Yeah, that's sweet, man. That's such a neat like I love that kind of inspiration where you're like keeping the shape language of the original card
Mm,
enough that like once you know what you're looking at, you're like, "Oh, that absolutely makes sense." That's really
yeah.
rad. Also your Rishi P that looks like New York from like I don't know, the Amsterdam or something.
Oh
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That was fun. That was for a pre-modern tournament where the prize was. They said, oh, we just want a Rishabh import for our prize. We don't care what you do, but something themed after our home city. And so I found this historical map of their home city, and that is from Cape Fear Games ran this pre-modern tournament, and that's a map of Cape Fear.
That's wild. That's hella cool. What do they think?
They were so stoked, and I think I'll get to do another one down the line. But I love seeing like that one has this weird old spelling where it says Fort Fisher showing Union attack, but showing I think is SHEW, but that's how spelling wasn't really standardized in the
Yeah.
20th century. See, and for me to like actually bring that historical thing in there is just feels so good, and I think my clients tend to appreciate these things and understand it. but
Hmm.
it is a kind of insanity that's my personality. That's part of I think that's just part
You're
of what I
like,
bring to it.
this needs to be deeply fastidious to the exact
Yes,
original. But then it's like, well,
exactly.
bro, this is still like a 3 by 5 inch card
Yep.
and it's very small and you have to
Yeah.
use magnifying glass and do it. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
but these scales need to be in the exact right place. Like,
Yep.
that's going to be under 3 sets of sleeves. They're
Yep.
literally never going to see that, but you will know, and that's enough.
Yep. And it's like I'd say like 95% of the cards I make for people get played, which I'm so happy about. If someone wants to put it on their shelf, so it's their card, but I love seeing them get flung, and when
Yeah,
I play EDH and I've got a hand with an alternate, they got a smile on my face,
exactly.
seeing something weird there that reflects me.
I love your Arabic soul, I mean, your Arabian Night soul ring, by the way. That's like one of my favorite ones you've done.
Oh,
Just to put
thank
it
you.
on
This
top of the
here,
desert or whatever. It looks so
yeah,
good.
this one is mine.
Yeah.
I love doing this.
The sh-
As if Soul Ring had been reprinted, and I painted the Arabian Night symbol.
that made me so
This,
happy. And
yeah,
just the
and this one,
shadowing you did on the dunes is gorgeous.
oh yeah, this one is fun because a lot of my cards I'll do with transfers and process, but this is a freehand card, and I just I like the idea that the Soul Ring was the sun. It's like, and the sun is the dominant force in the desert. It makes so much sense.
You know what I've always wanted?
Mhm.
And you might appreciate this, but also might find it very insanely difficult. Um, so one thing I've always wanted to get was an altar of a soul ring that looks like the giant wheel from the chariot at the old Sun Temple in Konark in India, which
Oh,
it's this incredibly gorgeous and intricately carved, huge stone wheel. I'm gonna look it up, listeners at home, because it's one of my favorite, frankly,
I'm gonna
like
I'm gonna look
carved.
this up too. It's the wheel at Konar.
Yeah, the wheel at Konark is like, if you look at it basically is this huge spoked like, let's see what
Oh,
it
wow.
it's stunning.
Oh, this is perfect. Oh, this is absolutely. Oh my God, it's so
Yes,
intricate and beautiful.
like that's the thing. I want that. And Eric Klug looked at me as like, look, y- no.
Well, I would be very into doing something like that.
Yeah,
It's
like
like it is so detailed. And I thought, Klug can do it.
yeah, of course he could, but I also
Klug,
don't want him to
Klug is
handicap
fantastic.
himself.
Yeah, and uh, yeah, these kind of exceptionally detailed pieces are such a pleasure, and I think that's just part of doing this. Sometimes the pieces might feel expensive to people because they're 30, 40 hours in them,
Yeah.
but for me, it is. I'm always trying to give more than, like, I just want to give so much. Like, I want to.
I
I
mean,
just want to
look,
go
that you get
crazy with them.
it's fun for you too, right?
Exactly,
Like
and it is part of the passion for the game.
yeah. Like I think like for instance, it's really sick. Like I mean, first off, altars take a long time. You have to have a lot of talent. There's a lot of skill
Yeah,
involved, but also you wouldn't waste 30 hours of your life detailed painting these things if you didn't also just think it was super fun to do. Like if you weren't getting
exactly.
enjoyment out of this, you would not be doing that. Um,
Yeah.
and like obviously, no shade to Klug. He's obviously one of the great OGs of the format, and
Oh yeah.
everything he's ever done is magical. I'm just like, man, of course I find the one thing I want from him that's just like he's just like, I have a child. I need to not lose myself into
Well,
this.
Shivam, well, send me a message. We'll
You
make
know,
this happen. Just give me 6 months.
right?
Yeah,
6 months
that
and
thing is, yeah,
isn't it
so
crazy looking?
detailed.
It's crazy.
It's so beautiful though,
Yeah.
and the fit. That's the thing, is that when the idea is good, it really it makes me want to go for it. It's
The
so detailed.
But, like, just the
Um,
idea of it's already a wheel, it's already the sun temple, it's just right there, right? Like,
yeah.
it and, like, the thing is that thing for me as a Hindu, that tells a lot of, like, my
Mm,
historical, relevance of this is, like,
yeah.
one of the ancient sun god temples that has just fallen to ruin because that deity is not really worshipped anymore, but it's still just, like, they found like, when they found these ruins in the jungle, this temple was built like a chariot, and each of the wheels was there, and then there were 7 smaller temples for each of the horses to represent the days of the week, etcetera, etcetera. It's stunning. It's like one of the most amazing pieces of art, and I'm glad that at least it survived that long. Because I'm sure some British guy was looking at that thing going like, "I'll bet I
Oh,
could
this
probably
would
carve that bitch out."
Yep. Yep.
Take it home, stick it in the
Yeah.
in the British Museum. You're like,
Yeah.
bruh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think that part of what's cool about alters, it speaks to just my interest in general, is like thinking about the way things are translated. When I was doing Top Prom, when I was doing these pieces from Cambodia, I wanted to think about representing them with a lot of dignity for the space and
mm,
not trying to make it look. I didn't add a fantastical element. I wanted to show the real place in the ruin that it is, and that's powerful as it is in the world. It didn't, just because it's a culture that is, you know, different from the place that printed the card, Sylvan Library, doesn't mean it's magic. It's
yes.
Magic the Gathering, but it's not elsewhere in that way. And that's something that I think about a lot, just the way the different pieces translate. And when I do the ukiyo-e pieces, these Japanese pieces that are based on the woodblock prints, I
Mm.
love. It's become a fairly popular one, even though it's a very labor-intensive kind.
I
Um,
love ukiyo-e style and
yeah,
sumi-e style like I'm a
yeah,
weeb. I love Japanese style artwork.
yeah.
Like,
It's,
especially one of the things I haven't yet found the image I want yet, but I want to get like a Japanese style ink wash of like the sumi-e style, like super impressionistic with just like brush strokes. But I haven't figured out what art I want to actually do with that yet. It's wild though because I'm looking through your archive and it's like here's a bunch of art that was based on cool like abstract artists or high fantasy like high artists or like famous or whatever, and then there's like uh the chick from One Piece.
that is, it's true. It's kind of an outlier. I think it's Cadena. And I have to say, I don't do a lot of those, partly because I think there are other altruists who do it better. When I say shout out to Sablon, MtG altruist, you
Mm.
want an anime style piece, I don't think it gets much better than that. They're so good.
They are the
They're
kings of that. It's
so good.
amazing.
And like I've got a history of that stuff too. I have to say there are a few ones where it's more in the manga style
Mm.
that I have a lot of love. I have this Himata Turok set that is based off of Otomo's Akira from the manga.
Yes.
And that's another one of the ones where that's one I kept for myself. And they're four different cards, and they line up to all together
Oh, that's
create
so
the
sick.
hymn. And it's so satisfying to just, and when they all kind of work individually, and they kind of, I think they look interesting on their own, but to assemble it into that large piece is really cool.
Yeah, that looks
Um,
sweet. Holy crap.
so every once in a while, I will do something that's along those lines. And that, in the case of the Cadena, the reason I actually took on that commission was because it's working on a foil,
Mm.
and I actually generally prefer not to work on foils. And the clients asked me, and someone who had gotten other cards before, and said, "Well, all right, I'll give it a shot. Let's see how it goes." And I was able to do it. I prefer the non-foil. It's a cleaner process,
Mm.
and I think there are people who do it better than me for foils. As I said, I think Surge, when it comes to foils, is just unbelievable. Um, Sablon does unbelievable things with foils too, and letting kind of de-inking them and then providing a transparent ink that allows the shine to come through in the foil. It's an incredible process.
Mm. So one of the things though, like you mentioned before we were talking, was that you had like a kind of an introductory way for people to get into doing altars, and to me, that's kind of like magic. It's like this impossible supernatural talent that I just can't conceive of because I've got very limited art skills. But I'm really curious, like if you were going to give somebody like kind of like a few minutes of primer explaining like what's a good way to kind of jump into this, assuming okay, look with the baseline understanding that you know how to draw and you have an idea of what you're doing, like how would you take a card and start working on
Yeah, well, thankfully, ideas more important than talent here. Let's talk
it?
about like a commander staple, right? Say you've got a solemn simulacrum, and you say, you know what? I love solemn. I've played in all my decks, and I just want to see C3PO there. Like, what a classic simple fit. Just makes sense. Or you can pick a different sad robot if you want. But I the Tin Man. Well, whatever fits. You say,
Sure.
okay, I'll pull up a picture of that, and you don't need to make it. impeccable. You don't need to perfectly erase in the image. You can just draw on top of it. And one of the easiest ways to do that are with Posca markers. Um, they're a paint marker that you kind of shake it up, and then it makes a very quick opaque line, and it doesn't require any priming.
Mm.
I think that's pretty fun. Um, you also, if you want to, you can erase the card as I did in my very first piece. This works better with sets that are older, and sets that use the stock that is Amonkhet and After in English, and foreign language cards from the modern border, not so good for erasing.
Hmm.
So for anything like that, I would recommend using a primer, mix the black and white, just
Yeah,
paint gray
because like
paint.
Japanese print cards kind of have a glossy front to them.
Exactly. And that glossy thing makes it slightly harder to paint. The
Hmm.
Poscas don't care though. The Poscas are just, it makes it so easy. Just draw whatever you want. Um, and I think that sort of goes back to some of the oldest days of Magic. You know, Magic was originally a gambling game with ante. And one of the things that happened wasn't in the rules, but happened kind of the way people played is for ante, you know, if you lose your ante game, you have to give the card to the opponent, but it doesn't mean you can't draw on it and mess it up first. There was a real culture of drawing sarcastic things on the cards you give to your opponent.
Oh god, I would never do that because I was always the hope springs eternal that I can try to win it back.
You gotta win it back. Yeah, but I kind of like that idea that um,
God, Auntie was such a
it,
mistake. Damn you,
oh
Garfield.
yeah,
Why would
yeah.
you do
No,
that?
I'm that's one part of old Magic that I'm happy to leave behind, but it's
I'm
fun
surprised
thinking
old
about
school
that
doesn't have
history.
Auntie though, because that feels like the sort of thing those grognards would definitely love.
Uh, there is a variant. I don't play it. So there are some people playing for Ante today, and it's crazy, and they definitely draw on those cards. But they play a lot of jeweled birds to try and prevent losing them. Um, in terms of getting started, I guess uh, if you're someone who is interested in getting started and has a little bit of an art background, you want to learn how to do it, and you want to, you know, you actually do want to kind of pick up the skills. I think one thing that is often very valuable is having a good reference image, which can be your own drawing. You know, certain altruists, I'll say MIB alters, only does original illustration,
Mm,
and he will make a full scale replica of what he's going to do before he puts it on the card. Or Yom alters, JLM, also makes really unique pieces and does a drawing beforehand and then draws it on the card. So I think that's something that's a really simple tip if you do have an art background, you want to get started, is you don't need to jump in and just say make all your decisions on the card. That little bit of prep work will go a long way when you're actually working on the card, especially if you're working on a card that maybe is a little bit more special to you. Something that, if you're working on a doubling season and say, okay, you're sweating it a little bit because you're new to it, that's totally fine, but just
I
do
feel
the
like if I
drawing
was
once
new,
first.
I would probably start with like a monodork or like something
Basics.
like
Yeah,
just a proof of concept, right? Like grab like a draft
totally.
chaff that you don't care about, like I don't know, rooting Chronic or whatever from
Yep.
Ikoria. Uh, just like something simple and stupid.
And I love to say changing the borders is a really cool thing you can do. Stained glass art is a thing that is printed by wizards now, but was invented by altruists who are just trying to change it up.
Mm,
Or if you look at some of the new things that are coming out in Commander Masters, these profile pieces,
dude, those are
which I
so
think,
cool.
yeah,
So
it's like
cool.
you can do that to your own cards. Let's see. Let me grab a magic card at random that is not altered, and we'll see.
The challenge,
All right,
right?
what am I gonna grab? Okay, I don't know.
You're gonna
Anything
be like
cool?
force of nature. Yeah, okay. Find the profile of force of nature. Good luck with that. It's a green blob just ambiently looking off to the side.
Well, the thing is, actually, what I put out is land tax, where it basically already has no background.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
like,
not sure that's
yeah,
not the
but now
best, but
imagine the profile of the land tax guy. His mustache is sticking 3D out of the painting.
yeah. Well, here's one, Null Spine Dragon, right?
Mm,
And you've got this dragon here with a big volcanic background, but
yeah.
actually there isn't that much contrast in the image.
Mm,
Imagine all you have at home is one Posca marker a little bit of patience and zero skill required. What I would do is tape the edges so you make a nice square border, and then carefully color around everything outside of that dragon. And I bet this would look really cool. Imagine if the color back there were like a bright yellow or a bright orange. The dragon would pop way more than it does
Yeah.
on the art.
I've seen those kind of altered before. They look like pop art almost, or
Yeah,
something that like yeah, it's just like it makes the thing just stand out on a very like monotone background, but like a hyper colored background.
definitely. And I think there's just something kind of fun about it. I saw someone do basic lands where they took white bordered basics and they painted the border of each basic the color of mana it was supposed to produce.
That is such a good idea. I
And it
can't believe I've never
honestly
thought of that before.
it looks so beautiful, and like that doesn't take really any special training to do.
But what I want to do though is which because now you put the idea in my head, is now I want to go and get some altruists to take these white bordered basics I have because I use them in my Minsc and Boo deck because I'm extra like that. I have a bunch of 8th edition lands in there. But now I want to
Amazing.
have
What is
them
your
like
art?
dapple like give me the red, but then make it like dappled like it looks like shadows and stuff for kind of like dancing. Oh god damn it.
Yeah.
This episode might be the most expensive episode after the end of the day, just because of how much money this thing is going to end up
Uh,
costing me.
it's funny. I there was something so fun about like working with constraints to the cards. Like I did I think for Greg's altar project, I guess he got the Oh My Goddess altar, right? It's
Yeah,
really such a cool piece. And with some new members from the CAG, I did one for Rebel, which was really awesome. And Rebel had actually been a client of mine in my first year as a professional altruist before she was on the CAG. So we had this,
pre-existing
worked together
relationship.
before.
That's
Hmm?
sweet. What did you
Yeah,
do
I mean
for
it's
her?
small, just hmm?
Like, what did you
And
do
what I
for
did
her?
for her is I did a CISA, and I think I don't know if Greg has put the archive of the new pieces up yet, which actually means I probably don't have it on my archives here. I'll send you a picture. It's it's a pretty crazy image, and it uses the original art for Sisei. It doesn't change that part up at all. But what is different is I made the border an absolutely super crazy, my version of what if an unglued border had like just went absolutely nuts with like the ovals, but just way crazier. So let's see. I'll send you a picture here.
Yeah, I'm looking because I think Greg posted that somewhere. He made an archive of it on the. And so I'm just going to dig for it real quick. Luckily, I can
Here we go.
edit
Just sent it to
this.
your Twitter here.
Okay, hang on.
Um, and this one, yeah, I'm just looking at it. It's so crazy. Like it's exactly the regular Sisei art,
What
but
the
some
hell?
things added in.
Okay, EK, you're gonna need to put this in. But so basically, this is this insane picture of Sisei in a center circle frame around it with the 5 colors of mana underneath her, and then on the left side there's Ren from Ren and Six. On the right side there's Karn. Underneath, what the hell is that mechanical owl with an angel thing? What is that?
Oh, that's Derevi popping in.
Oh, and then Oko is just sleeping on the bottom, and then the rebel is piloting the weatherlight. This is wild. This is completely nutty.
And it's got the white border. It's got this, this is a modern border card. So if you look at the white on it, that's like all of that space in between the frames is painted with the original dragon skin white from the original white cards.
That's
But the
amazing.
coloration on that is based off of the summer white cards. The summer magic was a misprinted set where everything was slightly too dark. So it's
They
got a
say
little bit
too
more
dark, but I say
contrast.
just dark enough.
Oh yeah. Like I don't own and probably never will own a summer magic card, but they look really sweet and weird.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like I I would like to, but also I that's fine.
Yeah, it's like you know, yeah. But this, I just thought that this is that little Easter egg that the coloration is based off of. It's like based on the Summer Sarah Angel, which I saw a scan of, and then the border is gilded, and then the borders inside are based on glued, and all the mana symbols are hand painted based on the unglued mana symbols. And
Yeah.
it's just this is sort of like you don't need to change the art or make it not MTG to have the altar showcase something cool. Like
That
sometimes
is,
the altar, it's like the Sylvan Library. I only changed the picture, and this I only changed the border.
you did a lot more than change the border, bro.
Yeah,
You
and
like,
and the Sisei is completely repainted as well.
yeah,
But
and like there's a whole gigantic custom frame. I mean, this is extensive. This is amazing. But it is, don't tell me you're like, oh yeah, I just painted the border. I'm like, bro, I can paint the border.
but yeah, I'm curious. I would love to see someone sling in the basics of the matched border colors, and I think it really will be. It's just the sort of thing that
Like,
you put on a podcast and you can do it. It doesn't take anything special.
god
I
damn
think
it! Now I want to do that.
you could do your shaded ones.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I can't draw a straight line, man. Like, that's not gonna happen.
That's what
Um,
the tape's for.
maybe I will because they're only 8th edition basics. Nobody cares. Um,
Yeah.
this has been fascinating. This has been really, really cool. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thanks for devoting time to this very niche corner
Oh,
of
you know what? People love
of
alters. This is
MTG.
awesome. I apologize again to the audio listeners at home because I get it. It's hard to. This one might be one that you want to check out on the YouTubes. Just go and look and see what these beautiful pieces look like, because I'm gonna have EK go through and just paste them up there. Um, okay, but if folks wanted to find, oh, we didn't even ask how people commission you or whatever. But if folks wanted to find you, where could they?
So I am SKAltered with an ED at the end on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I guess now
Everywhere
Threads.
else,
Yeah,
Blue Sky,
everywhere.
Mastodon,
Yeah,
Threads.
yeah, exactly. Everywhere your socials can be found. Discord as well. But I think Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are the primary ones that I use. And Facebook and Instagram have the best archives of my work. And on
Yes, they
Twitter,
do.
you get a little bit more of my kind of voice and other things in Magic as well, of
Cool.
course. And I'm always happy to talk about new pieces. I definitely have a bit of a a wait list where the pieces do take time, and I try and give really clear communication about the time frame and the turnaround and all of that. But I'm always happy to talk about that in messages.
That is one thing that's I wish people were a little bit more understanding about, that doing alters takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to customize and draw and do a thing, and you have to accept that, and you have to have some modicum of patience to be able to get into this.
Yeah, and it is true. There are different. There are a lot of altruists out there, and I think people do such amazing work. And especially when someone's starting out as an altruist, they often are looking for new clients. So it's like if you need a faster turnaround time, I bet you can find someone out there who can do it. That's and they're alters at every price point. My pieces are going to look a lot more expensive than someone who's just starting out, and they're going to look really cheap compared to a Klug. So
Yeah, like I don't mean to keep harping on Klug. He's just the one that comes to mind first. There are a lot of really good altruists out there,
oh,
but
absolutely,
Eric Klug
and
is just Eric Klug, though.
absolutely. He was doing it really early, and he does great work.
Yeah.
And I think in the community, a lot of people support each other and learn from each other. And I do think that as a group, altruists are pushing each other to do more and more ambitious stuff. And I think also as Commander becomes, really probably the most popular way people play Magic these days, this kind of fire for making your deck reflect you and not worrying so much about the tournament legality is really great for alters. And I definitely encourage anyone to try it out themselves or to get an altar or trade for one. They're just they're out there, and that's I don't know. To
Mm.
me it's a big part. It's a big part of Magic, and it really is. It's it's just fun to play with them. I play with other people's altars, not my own mostly.
I love it when altruists support each other, because then you get to see like a whole panoply of different like kinds of art there. It's one of those things that's like, the tailor has no shoes, like rather the cobbler has no shoes type of thing. No,
Yep.
nobody wants to
Yep.
alter their own deck. Um,
Yep.
but if you want to find that said, thank you again for joining me. It's been lovely, but I do need to call this show a day. And so, folks, if you want to find me, you can find me at Gearpuri Gears on Twitter. You can find Casual Magic anywhere Casual Magic. You can find Casual Magic anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. on Tuesdays, or at YouTube on Tuesdays, thanks to my editor EK. And remember, my friends, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.